Hey everybody, Elliot Wilcox here, in-home personal trainer and executive wellness manager. Today I'm going to take through you 5 different ways you can make an exercise more difficult. And so for today we're just going to go through a squat. You can use these same kind of principles through many different kinds of exercises, but for today we're just going to use a squat just to kind of explain the 5 different types. I normally use these 5 different types with clients just to kind of as a progression or just kind of to throw in there to work on different ranges of motion and different parts of stability that are lost throughout different kinds of exercises. Today we're just going to go over a squat and we're going to get going. Let's go. So the first variation that you can do to make an exercise more difficult is tempo. And tempo meaning that by the book you want to do a 3-second descent. So like if you're doing like a squat, again we're just going to do like a front squat hold. We're going to do a 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to go 1 second on the way up. And so that just makes sure that you're not, I use the word plopping down and wearing out the brakes. And what I mean by brakes, I mean your joints, so like your hips, your knees, your ankles, low back and such. And so that really helps slow down the range of motion, putting that time under tension. And you can vary those tempo a little bit. So rather than 3 seconds, you could go 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1. And you can work that all the way up to like 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, even 30 seconds for descending, just to increase that time under tension. And so that is the first way to make an exercise more difficult, tempo. The second way you can make an exercise more difficult is putting a pause in there. So almost kind of like an isometric exercise or a static hold, you're going to go throughout that range of motion. So for being a squat, we're going to go down with control, hold it for 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say 5 seconds, and then come back up. And so you're going to spend more time in that bottom position per se, and we're going to still come up. And so we're just go for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then come all the way back up. And so that's kind of putting a pause at the bottom range of motion of your squat or other types of exercise. So that is your second way to make an exercise more difficult. The third way to make an exercise more difficult is an isometric or static hold position. Basically, you're keeping tension on the muscles at all times, no movement whatsoever. So like before, the pause squat, you were down for a certain period of time and then you come back and you would repeat that for a number of reps. Whereas an isometric or a static hold exercise, you're going to stay down there for that entire time rather than doing rep after rep. So for instance, let's go for 10 seconds. And again, you can work up to 20, 30, 40, 50, even a minute of exercise or more, depending on your abilities. So let's go for just a nice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And it's really important that you're sitting where muscles are activated. You're not all the way down at the bottom where no muscles are activating and you're putting pressure on wrong parts of the body. So that is the third way to make an exercise more difficult. All right, now the fourth way to make an exercise more difficult is working different parts of ranges of motion. And so in your mind, think with me really quick. So a squat. Full range of motion is 1. Well, if we divide that into 3, we're going to have a top, a middle, and a bottom. And so what you can do is basically work those 3 different range of motions. And so for instance, we're going to get into a squat stance. We're just going to work the top. And so we're going to go from the top to the middle and then back up. Some people would call that a half squat. If you saw somebody in the rack and you're like, oh, they're half squatting. Well, maybe they're just working the top part range of motion where they're seeing some wiggleness in the knee, they're shifting at the hip, or they just don't know how to squat. And so we're just working that top range of motion, halfway down, and then back up. All right, so let's say we were gonna work the middle part of a squat. And so not necessarily the top or the bottom. So we're not gonna lock out at the top, or we're gonna drop all the way down to the bottom. And you'll see a lot of bodybuilders working these 3 kind of ranges of motion just because it's gonna keep different kinds of tension on the muscle. They're also going to use those other examples as well, but you'll see a lot of them do this one as well. So that mid part range of motion. So we're not gonna go all the way up or down. All right, so we're gonna go a little bit down, not all the way up. A little bit down, a little bit up. So I'm keeping tension on my body the entire time without letting it release, either at the top or at the bottom fully. All right, so just working that top range of motion, and then just keep that tension on the body throughout. So the third part of range of motion, so if you're thinking in your head like 3 different parts, you know, one, top end, the middle, now we have the bottom. So that includes the bottom half, all right, and the bottom, all right? So the middle and the bottom. All right, so if we were to, the first one, you're always starting at the top, and then you're gonna go all the way down to the bottom, keeping everything engaged. We're not plopping down, all right? And we're only gonna come up halfway. Then we're gonna come back down, and then back up. And you'll be able to do a different amount of these depending on your kind of capability. We're working all the way down, and then half up. And so that's kind of the fourth way that we can manipulate different kinds of ranges of motion to help make exercises more difficult. All right, here's number 5. So the fifth and last one, and that is to add some weight. So if you notice so far, I've done basically body weight for all of these. You can get a great exercise with different body weight, with your body weight using those 4 previous examples to make exercises harder. And to make them even more harder, you can add some weight to it. Yes, number 5, to make exercises more hard, add some weight. But for the first part, try those first 4 before you go up in weight. So for this exercise, we're gonna use a little kettlebell, hold it in goblet squat position by the horns of the kettlebell, get in that squat stance, and we're just gonna do just a regular squat, nice and controlled on the way down. We're not, again, wearing out our brakes, so nice and controlled. We're not plopping down, using that word again, plop. All right, nice and controlled, coming all the way back up. And so for that 5th one, it is to add weight. So before you start adding weight, go through those 4 previous ones, and then that 5th final one, you're like, man, I'm gonna start adding some weight. And then you can kind of repeat those first 4 just to kind of help boost some strength and endurance in whatever exercise that you're doing. All right, everybody. So that is my helpful 5 different ways you can increase or make exercises harder on yourself before you go up in weight. Peace out.